In this talk session, today we have amidst us Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, popularly known as JP, is a renowned politician, a political reformer, and a former IAS officer. A true visionary, he is the founder and the president of the Lok Satta Party. He is well known for his role in bringing electoral reforms and the RTI Act. Born in Nagpur, Maharashtra, Dr. Narayan spent his early childhood near Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh. He joined the Andhra Loyola College for his intermediate education and obtained his medical degree from the Guntur Medical College. In 1980, Dr. Narayan joined public administration after securing an All India second rank in the IAS examination. He worked in fields such as the agriculture, irrigation, and technology in various capacities across the districts of Andhra Pradesh. He resigned from the IAS in '96 so as to work on the grassroots movements of good governance. So, in '96, Dr. Narayan started the Lok Satta movement to educate the citizens of India about voting, rights, and governance. Dr. Jayaprakash is currently a member of the Legislative Assembly from Kokatapalli constituency. With his selfless service over the years, he has acquired a formidable reputation in the state. We are privileged to have such a distinguished personality amidst us. So, I request Dr. Deepthi Mishra, the SLC chair of IIIT Hyderabad, to welcome Dr. Jayaprakash with a bouquet. Thank you, ma'am, and welcome, sir, to IIIT Hyderabad. Now I request Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan to kindly take over the session.
Friends, I don't intend to inflict a lecture on you. Instead, right from the beginning, I would like to make it some kind of an interactive session. What I propose to do is for about half an hour or 40 minutes, we'll have a Socratic kind of a interaction, so that in a structured manner but in an informal way, we'll try and arrive at some broad understanding collectively. And then we'll have actually a question answer session where you're completely free to ask almost anything under the sun. Is that okay? All right. We were supposed to discuss today this whole issue of clean politics. Why? Why do you think this discussion is necessary at all? Anybody? Does this work? So groggy here in the morning?
Lot of instability is in society.
Pardon?
Lot of instability is in society.
Lot of uncertainty in society.
The major part is always the politics.
Okay. Anybody else? Why do we need to discuss this at all? Is it important for you or me?
Politics is the only way to bring reforms, at least in a democratic society.
Okay.
One of the ways to.
We all agree that there are many things that are wrong, right? Could you all list some of the things that are wrong? Anybody? One each.
Corruption.
Corruption. Okay. Anybody else?
Misuse of power.
Misuse of power. Okay. Anything else?
Policy makers.
So what's wrong with that?
They are the ones who try to bring rules into implementation.
I'm not able to see who it is. Just raise your hand. Okay. They are the ones.
Yeah, the politicians are the ones who try to bring laws into picture. It's not.
Now the question is, what is wrong?
General view in front of the society that it is just an area where people don't enter and that is just everybody.
So politics is not hospitable to decent people and good people. Is that what you said?
Actually, the view in society that we make it look like that.
Okay. Is that a smart thing? It's not a smart thing. Okay. Who else? Anybody? No, we already discussed corruption. So what is wrong with our public administration? What is wrong with our governance process? Perhaps what is wrong with our society?
they are not accountable to the board.
Okay, unaccountability. Anything else?
No efficiency.
No efficiency. In what sense?
The amount which is delivered is not proportional to the money which they receive.
So there is no delivery. Essentially, there is a failure to deliver. And almost anybody who reaches out to a public office is dissatisfied. If it's merely corruption, people will mind too much. It's actually terrible delivery. In the smallest things that you need, let's say you want a water connection, you want a power connection. And 20 years ago, let's say your parents wanted a telephone connection. Have you ever asked your parents about telephone connection? They were almost 20 years ago. They don't have. So almost anything that you are entitled as a citizen, for which you are willing to pay legally, even that is excruciatingly difficult. The enormous basis. What else? Major politicians? Your mistake. There your mistake. I can guarantee you 85 to 90% of the graduates, postgraduates, doctorates, medical doctors, engineers, all kinds of stuff. So it's not lack of education that is causing the problem on politicians. I can guarantee you. That's a common misperception of this country. That's not true. That's not true. The problem is something much deeper.
People want to change, really make a change from something.
Yes, there is an unwillingness to enter, perhaps there is also entry barrier. It's also difficult to enter and to make a meaningful contribution.
Yeah.
Yes. But don't focus only on politicians in public space. There's so much more to government and governance than politicians. Okay, public safety, citizen safety, yes. What else? Poverty, abject poverty. Despite years and years of planning and all kinds of schemes, people seem to be still desperately poor and hungry. Yes, what else? Don't go into analysis, just specify what is wrong. Right now, you describe symptoms. Okay, is population really a problem? No, seriously, because I remember in 1974, as a young medico, I wrote an essay in those days. I was so agitated about population that I wrote an essay about the need for compulsory sterilization in India. I really advocated that every single person should be sterilized, and if you want children, it must be an active effort to desterilize. That was a young man's concern. But today, for two reasons, it's no longer a big issue. I know some people keep talking about that, but in reality, in large parts of India, population has now come to stabilization level. Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, to a large extent Maharashtra. Many other states are now pretty close to stabilization level. Only in a significant measure, Bihar is the laggard right now, but perhaps things will improve there also in the next 10 years or so. UP, Orissa, to some extent Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. But even there, things actually are improving, though not as fast as they should. So population problem has been licked in a substantial measure. India is now close to stabilization level, though at the high end, after reaching 1.2, 1.3, maybe we'll reach 1.4, 1.5 billion people. But now there's light at the end of the tunnel. So population is no longer what it was 25, 30 years ago. And second, you all know about Chinese experience, right? Today they are finding that the one-child policy is actually a problem. Every year the number of workers available for the economic activity is declining. Last year I think some 35 million people have gone out of work or gone out of the working age population. And now, in retrospect, the Chinese leaders are thinking that perhaps they have committed a mistake in their exuberance or over-enthusiasm to control population. Therefore, if you really do the right things, population is an asset, and that's why this talk about demographic dividend. The problem is not so much population, but it is that we are not doing the right things to empower and to skill our population to make them productive. Therefore, the demographic dividend is turning a demographic nightmare. So it's not population per se as numbers that's a problem. It is that we are not actually doing what it takes to build a modern economy and to make them productive participants in a modern economy. Is that a fair point? So don't view population as a problem. But governance is a problem because we have spectacularly failed. In fact, I was trying to draw some pictures, and give me just 30 seconds more to complete this. Anybody heard, not leaning toward PISA, but have you heard of PISA? A survey called PISA, P-I-S-A. It's called Program for International Students Assessment. 74 countries participated in this survey of 15-year-olds to measure the educational outcomes at the age of 15. What would be your guess about India's ranking? Out of 74 countries, this includes rich countries and countries like us, many emerging economies, etc. Make a guess, what would be India's rank? Anybody? Okay, you're not very optimistic, 65 to 70. Those who believe it would be somewhere in the top 10, please raise your hands. Okay. Those who believe it will be somewhere in the top half. Obviously, those who raised first also must be there, right? All right. Those who believe we are in the bottom half. Those who believe we are in the bottom 10. Bottom 5. Okay, do you know what India's rank is? 73rd out of 74 countries. 73rd out of 74 countries. Do you want to know which country is below us? Okay, there's only one country below us, obviously. Anybody has an idea? It's a country called Kyrgyzstan. The Kyrgyz Republic, which is a Central Asian republic, erstwhile Soviet republic. When Soviet Union broke up into 15 fragments, this is one of the countries in Central Asia, one of the 5, north of Afghanistan in Central Asia. Luckily for us, that country also was included in the survey. Here are 3 figures. Can you all see? The top one is a rectangle with 10 units as the base or length, 6 units as the height or width. Another is the step ladder, kind of the steps, but base of 10 units, height 6 units, but in the form of steps going up and down. The third is a parallelogram with a base of 10, height of 6. Now tell me, which one has the most perimeter, the longest perimeter? How many would say the first one? Okay, those who believe steps. Second one? Okay, third one? All 3 are equal? The reason why I asked this question is, this is one of the questions asked in the PISA survey. What is the perimeter of the first figure? 32 units. Look at the second figure, the base is 10 units, right? Take all the vertical limbs going up, just take only the vertical components going up, how much? Total? 6. Take the vertical components coming down, take the parallel components or horizontal components on a standalone basis. What's the perimeter? 32. How many of you answered that that is the longest one? A significant number, right? And look at the parallelogram. 10 is the base, 6 is the height, but there are slanted sides. Therefore, the slanted side would be more or less than 6. Therefore, perimeter is? This is one of the questions I asked, and most Indians answered the steps. That's the reason why we are 73. Not because of this one question, this is just a sample. Now, we all know this, right? It doesn't take more than 30 seconds to get an answer. But we don't apply our mind. If you're asked what is the perimeter of a rectangle, twice length plus breadth, or 2 lengths plus 2 breadths, right? Or area of a rectangle, length into breadth, or something else. I mean, these things we're very good at. But application of even this elementary knowledge, which should be a 7th grade affair, we're not good at it. That's the reason why India languished. I drew these pictures just to demonstrate to you what's wrong with our education. We are 73rd in the world. So the problem is not so much of the population, as I thought when I was an adolescent actually. The problem is what we've done with the population. That's where the governance problem is very fundamental. Okay? Any other issues? What are the things that are wrong with the country? Healthcare. Not only has it become business, but became inaccessible, low quality, poor outcomes, and India has the largest number of physically handicapped people due to preventable causes. We have 10 million people who are blind. Almost all are preventable. We have 10 million people suffering from poliomyelitis, or at least post-polio paralysis. The largest number, both of these, the largest number in the world. We probably have annually about 150 to 200,000 children born with physical abnormalities which are totally preventable. If the mother during pregnancy, she suffers from what is called rubella or German measles, then mother would be perfectly all right. There will be a couple of days fever, some rash and all that, but the child is born with blindness or deafness or heart disease or limbs not formed. And it's totally preventable because there's a vaccine. Have you heard of MMR vaccine? In that MMR, R is for rubella, mumps, measles, and rubella. The vaccine is available. And yet 150,000 children a year are born with preventable congenital abnormalities, to give one instance. And we can go on and on. So healthcare is not merely the expense of it, it's just the access of it. Because people are willing to pay. In India, about 78 to 79% of the healthcare expenditure is borne by the citizens. Most of it is out of pocket because there's hardly any insurance in this country. We are the country with one of the highest rates of private health expenditure out of pocket. So demand side is very strong. Outcomes are third rate. So there's a deep crisis in healthcare too. Again, the governance problem. So it's more than politics and politicians. Don't always focus on this politician, that fellow. Of course, they're all bad, but the problem is much deeper. Otherwise, we will simply become rabble-rousers without any consequence. That doesn't solve the problem. The law's delays. Have you ever tried to go to a court of law? For a simple thing, suppose you have a problem with a neighbor about some property dispute. It's not a government problem, it's not a political problem. It takes decades if you're lucky. Right? And criminal cases, even criminal cases take sometimes 10, 15 years. In 1975, a chap called Ellen Mishra. Anybody heard of Ellen Mishra? Lalit Narayan Mishra. Anybody heard the name? Lalit Narayan Mishra was a bigwig in 1970s. He was a close lieutenant of Mrs. Gandhi. He handled most of the party's money, etc. He was a railway minister. He was killed in a bomb blast in Samastipur in Bihar. It was a big issue in those days. How many years now? 1975 till date? 38 years. That criminal case of the murder of a cabinet minister is now being tried in a criminal court in the country, 38 years later. And none of you is aware of that name. And 80% of Indians alive today were not born then. And yet, even the cabinet minister's murder, we haven't tried the case until now. So things are pretty dismal. It's not merely political. There's something much deeper. Rule of law is at a premium. It simply is not available in this country. Of course, infrastructure, the power sector, it stinks. I'm sure you all have a generator standby in this institution, right? Otherwise, you can't function really. And in 21st century, imagine a country aspiring to grow economically, not having adequate or reliable power. There's nothing more absurd than that. So there are huge problems. What I want you to look at is, when you look at politics and governance, don't merely bother about the external symptoms of a politician or two. Look at the whole governance process and then in a systematic way, try and find answers. Okay. Something is seriously wrong. That we all agree? Who is guilty? I'll give you three candidates: the politician, the bureaucrat, or the judge. How many of you say a politician is most guilty? Please raise your hands. Don't be hesitant. It's not an examination. Nobody's going to beat you up. What you really feel. Who is most guilty? The politician? Okay, those who believe bureaucrats are most guilty. Those who believe judges are guilty. What about the rest? You believe nobody is guilty? No, that's escapism. You must apportion blame. Start again. Those who believe politicians are guilty, please raise your hands. Okay, this is more like it. Bureaucrats, judges. Let me say something unconventional. Of course, all these three have messed up. They have failed the country, but you know what? I would actually argue that the politician is least guilty among these three. Not because politicians are nice fellows or lily white or anything of the kind, but because for the misdeeds of politicians, there are legitimate and genuine compulsions today. Do you know how much it costs to contest for an assembly seat in Andhra Pradesh today, or Karnataka, or Tamil Nadu? If you are a serious competitor? Anybody has an idea? How much does it cost? No, not for one assembly seat. 100 crores is, we have still not reached that level. Anybody? 4 or 5 crores is the norm. There are cases where 15, 20, 25 crores are spent for one assembly constituency by one candidate. But that still is not the average or the norm. But the median expenditure is easily about 5 crores for state assembly constituency in many states. And if it's Lok Sabha constituency, it's about 25 crores. Just 3 days ago, I was with the Law Minister of India. We were discussing some of these numbers. And he's saying, my God, in Andhra Pradesh is, he talked about some other states and compared and all that. Now, let's assume that that's the kind of money you have to spend. If somebody spent 5 crore rupees to be a legislator at the state level, without even executive authority, can you realistically expect that there will be honesty in governance? I mean, obviously, he's not going to spend 5 crores of his personal money because he loves the country so much that he has to serve as a legislator. Otherwise, no, his heart will stop beating. So, if the politician, therefore, is resorting to all kinds of dirty things, this is the money part. There's also another part. We'll come to it later. The expectations. And therefore, to meet the expectations, a certain trajectory of action. And therefore, the consequences. So, there are serious compulsions. At least they mitigate the politician's culpability. Because the problem is bigger than that of an individual politician. There's a larger systemic problem. And honesty is increasingly incompatible with survival. There are honest politicians, many, but they can no longer survive. Even if they're personally clean, they have to allow systemic dishonesty to survive. Or else they are increasingly marginalized in politics and ejected out of politics. See, the price is so great, then we must regard probably these fellows more as victims than villains. They're of course also villains, there's no question about it, but they're also oftentimes victims. If we don't examine that, understand this, we'll not be part of the solution. The problem with this country, with the middle classes and the young people is, we all want to go to Jantar Mantar or Indira Park or some other place and shout, no, this fellow is bad, they're all bad, hang them, kill them, do this stuff. But we don't understand what is the reason why things are bad. And you are in the field of education. It is about understanding the processes. You all remember Archimedes? You've forgotten because now it's no longer relevant. Archimedes was asked by somebody during his time. He was the greatest mathematician and physicist of his age. He was asked by somebody. He said, Master, you are such a great mathematician and physicist. Can you move the planet Earth? He said, of course I can, and I will, subject to 2 conditions. One is, give me a place to stand upon, because I require a fulcrum, a base. I can't stand on the Earth to move the Earth. And the second is, give me a long enough lever. You all know as students of physics, he was absolutely right. If there's a big boulder, if you asked a young man who is very impetuous, very impatient and unwise, but very emotional, to move that boulder, he'll go and hit his head. The head will break, but the boulder will not move. Somebody less impetuous, somebody less emotional, but not particularly wise, will try and lift it with the bare hands. The limbs will ache, he'll perspire, he'll exhaust himself, he'll collapse, but the boulder will not move. But somebody is smart, somebody from IIIT, you will go and fetch a sturdy rod, you'll take a small little pebble, place the rod at the appropriate place, use the pebble as a fulcrum, and use your limited muscular energy at the other end, and definitely, no matter how big the boulder is, it will move. That is the principle of levers, right? That's what education is about. And if the educated Indians don't understand what exactly is wrong and how to set it right, then we also become part of the problem. One of the tragedies of India, and I'm saying it in a harsh way, is no matter how educated a person thinks she is or he is, or how illiterate the person is, and this includes the prime ministers and IAS officers and ministers in the country, not merely the average educated person. Most of them are equally uninformed about our country. They want to look at a few symptoms and then browbeat and chest beat and complain without looking at the reasons why this is happening, and therefore the means of redressing that. They don't understand what are the levers of change, and my purpose in this hour and a half or two is to try and give you a sense of the levers, not to breastbeat and do chest thumping and say how bad India is or how great I am. Both are nonsensical. What we need is a deep understanding of what is the reason why we are in kind of a mess. There are some things we've done well, some things we've done badly. Now, how do you now minimize the bad things and how do you maximize the good things? It is a science. It is about logic. It's about understanding what is. And then we can be part of a solution. And that's the reason why I'm taking you through this kind of a course. Otherwise, the easiest thing to say how terrible everything is, how much of corruption is, and give you some numbers and bamboozle you, and then say you all do something. I don't know what that something is. Or give some silly formula and say this is a panacea. Just do it and everything is okay by tomorrow. Sorry. There is no magic wand. There is no one panacea. There are a significant number of solutions, not too many. But unless we understand why and how, we will not be a part of the solution. Okay? All right. We have all agreed that there are plenty of woes we suffer from. There's a litany of woes each of you can come up with. But politician, as I explained to you, is not perhaps the most guilty. The bureaucrat actually is more guilty because the bureaucrat cannot complain that his survival depends on dishonesty. Many of you aspire to be civil servants. You know many civil servants. In no other country does a civil servant get the kind of enormous security as in India. Once you enter government at any level, from a chaprasi to an IAS officer, you are practically invulnerable. Even if you are thoroughly incompetent, even if you are manifestly corrupt, it's almost impossible to sack you. You are the son-in-law of the government. But even the bureaucrat can complain that, look, while my survival does not depend on this, my sense of well-being sometimes does depend, because if I am seen to be very uncompromising, then maybe I would be transferred too many times and there will be some kind of difficulties, yes, or sometimes even emotional difficulty, even if there is no physical discomfort. After all, you invest a lot of emotional energy into that. You want to achieve goals for the country or society, and you are thrown from pillar to post, and so therefore that emotional pain is quite palpable. Though many of us tell people, look, it doesn't matter, you just move on and do what is required, but there is a genuine emotional difficulty. We can understand that. A judge is even more guilty, because a judge is invulnerable to political vagaries, because judiciary is truly independent in this country. And yet, the failures of judiciary in terms of performance or in terms of integrity are as pronounced, if not more pronounced, than those of the politician and the bureaucrat. Now, I am saying this not because I hate judges, but just to restore a balance in public discourse, to deepen your perception about what is wrong in India. It's not this fellow or that fellow. There's no point trying to find alibis. We have to look deeper. There is a larger systemic process at work. And that's why we must look at the political process and the governance process together. Okay? Now, how many of you believe that we are not fit for democracy? Why? Okay.
Most of the people are not even literate in India. They don't have scientific literacy. They don't have possess enough thinking capacity to deal with these problems at a logical level. People are very easily carried away by emotions and by bribery.
Anybody else?
There are people, they have different motives, they are selfish, okay. So they do different things, but there is no
integrity is lost in their members. That's what I think. Means because everybody is thinking of something else, and in the end, they counterparts, and that's why all these things, corruption, these things happen.
Okay, both your colleagues made very compelling case to say that India perhaps is not ready for democracy. Those who believe that India is ready for democracy, defend. Please.
According to what he said, like, if we have only one leader and if he is corrupt, then we'll be helpless. That is my point. Like, at least in democracy, we might have leaders who are not corrupt, who really want something good. But if it's not democratic,
So, whether democracy is a good thing or not, you're absolutely right. But are we fit for democracy or not is the debate now.
I think like,
How? Defend.
there's still a possibility for change.
Okay. Anybody else? Come on. There are many people who said we are fit for democracy.
No other form of governance has helped in history. And democracy is probably one of the only ways of
Yeah,
governance.
again, this is not about the merits of democracy, it's about the fitness of our people for democracy.
We probably don't have a choice because we know that our corrupts.
That still doesn't answer this question. You demonstrate to me that we are fit for democracy.
So according to me,
Yes, who is that? Please raise your hand. Yes, go on. Okay, after you.
so according to me, democracy is very right because people are.
No, that we are all